Hey, everybody. Welcome to the initial episode of Be My Guest. My name is Dave Mignani. You may know me if you paid any type of attention to the number one hospitality podcast as producer Dave. But today, I'm flipping the script. I'm coming in front of the camera. I'm going to bring you a brand new show that I'm trying to develop, really about the hospitality industry in a different way than some of the other things that I may be working on. The premise of Be My Guest is to really tell some hospitality stories from the people that are working or unfortunately not working within the industry, especially through COVID. Certainly, we've spoken to a lot of upper level executives on some of the other work that we've done, but now I want to talk about some real life stories, some personal stories, and some personal tales. Think of if you've ever heard of Humans of New York, that really successful Instagram, social media kind of blog where they go around talking to people about some of their real life stories. It's kind of the same idea, at least that's my intention, but in more of a long form video recording, video interview. And obviously, we're going to put some of the audio on the podcasts as well, so you can check it on iTunes, Spotify, really anywhere that you get your podcast. But the idea here is to really allow people within the hospitality industry to open up. Want to hear your stories, the good, the bad, the ugly, and obviously what's been happening through COVID because, well, let's be honest, a lot of it's ugly, and it's ugly for a lot of people. And the idea here is to get people in the industry or people in general that are struggling with kind of these feelings of loneliness or it's just happening to you, and really open up and let you know that it's not just you. We're all going through a lot of stuff right now. A lot of it's very, very difficult, and we are all dealing with it in different ways. We've all had different experiences. So I really want to really present a forum, per se, an open forum for people to just open up, right? Just open up, be yourself, have a chat. I'm actually going to do an open call to anybody who wants to join. Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I want to talk to anybody in hospitality. It could be hotels, cruise lines, airlines, travel agents, OTAs, any restaurants. It doesn't matter. If you want to come on and tell your story, I want you to come on and talk to me, because the whole point of this is being a well-rounded, open forum type of discussion where we can just have a chat. Think of it as a coffee, a cup of coffee and interaction, but you're going to be my guest on this show. And I think we're going to have a great time doing it. Again, reach out to me. You can see the LinkedIn number or the LinkedIn address right there at the bottom. But I really, really am looking forward to doing this and have a really great guest for our initial episode here. Someone I've actually worked personally with and very close with, and he's been very gracious enough to come on and tell his story. So without further ado, I'm going to bring him in as Mr. Haroon Baig, awesome accounting expert. Bring you on right now, Haroon. How are you today? Thank you for being my guest.
Hey, David, how are you? I'm doing great.
Appreciate you coming on. So Haroon, just for those who don't know, has been in the hospitality industry, mostly on the hotel side. And Haroon, I'm going to let you tell your full story in a second, but he's been in that accounting side, right? So he's dealing with all the numbers, making sure the books make sense. So anybody out there who's in operations, F&B, banquet, who's had their budgets cut, who's had their checkbook closed, I want to take a look at. So Haroon, again, thank you for being my guest today. Really great to have you on this wonderful, wonderful day we have going on out here. How are you?
Great, man. It's a beautiful day today. Just enjoying life through the pandemic as much as I can.
And that's a really thing that you can say, right? That's a great point you bring up, is just enjoying it as much as you can, because there's so much of this out of our control, right? It's impacted so many people's lives directly, but nobody really has control on it. There's nothing we can do about it, and to a large degree. So that's a great kind of mindset to have, trying to do it the best you can. It doesn't always have to be perfect. It's never going to be perfect in general, but certainly this situation is never going to be perfect. So it's really just trying to find those little victories that you can during a very, very unfortunate time. So we can jump right into it. How have you been able to kind of do that and keep that positive mindset?
So, it's just, from the beginning, it was just about keeping your head above water, right? You, as a professional in the hospitality field, there are decisions that have to be made, and there were some tough decisions that we had to make this year. That includes furloughing employees, that includes laying off individuals, that includes, closing hotels, that includes, so many things. And, none of us are immune to it. I've actually been on both sides of it. I've been on the side of the desk, doing the furloughs and the layoffs, and just most recently, I've also been on the other side where I just recently got furloughed as well. And it's completely understandable. Really can't be angry at anybody, but it's just a situation, and on a personal level, it doesn't feel good. You have to understand that for everybody else that's going through the same thing, and you just have to be empathetic, and we're all in this together. And all we can really do right now is just hope that things get better so we can return back to our jobs and our normal lives, and just go back to the way things were.
Yeah, and to give you kind of a quick background out there on why Haroon's my first guest on Be My Guest, and that's because, again, we've worked together. So we worked together at our last property, the property that I was
Yeah.
furloughed, then laid off from, and Haroon was just mentioning he was eventually furloughed from. And we had a really strong relationship, and we're going to kind of dive into that impact and what that really kind of means to lose that a little bit later in the episode. But I brought him on because, one, a little bit of a comfort level for me to start this whole thing off and get a nice strong dialogue going, but two, we really can dive into a lot of our own personal feelings, because not only did we go through it together as it was happening, but we've stayed in constant communication, and we've been, very good support systems towards each other. Haroon's certainly been one towards me. But Haroon, give me a quick rundown of your experience in the industry. Where'd you start off? Did you always want to be in hospitality? How did you kind of get to where you are?
Yeah, absolutely. So, from college, I just started interning at a hotel. My initial plan was to join an accounting firm, and essentially be a specialist from that field. But starting my internship in an accounting department within a hotel, I started to understand how hospitality works, and I essentially fell in love with it. And because of that, I never left. And for about 10 years, this is what I've been doing. So for the past 10 years, I've been working in the New York metro area for a number of hotels, whether they're branded or independent, and just giving them my expertise in the accounting field, and just leading those hotels to success. So it's it's been something that I've been doing for a while, and very happily, and feeling very fulfilled in the industry. So you know it's a great place to be.
And obviously, you're a young guy. We're both young guys, and the position that we got into, at our previous property, we were essentially leading our departments, right? So I
Yeah.
was, for the most part, heading up the revenue generation strategies. You were for the most part leading the accounting department, right?
Yep.
So we were able to kind of get to a really strong place at a fairly young age, and I think a place that we both had worked very hard towards, and really in line with that trajectory of our career, where we both anticipated our careers going.
Mhm.
And then COVID strikes, right?
Yeah.
And my favorite joke with you is the idea of for those of us that are out there. So my bonus plan was actually on a quarterly bonus from a revenue generation strategy, and January and February the hotel did great,
Yeah.
and we were up I want to say 145,000 to budget coming out of February.
So close.
And Haroon's saying, "Man, you're gonna really love your bonus this quarter." And I'm saying, "I'm not touching it till we get it." From a radio show that I listen to in the mornings, the phrase of "Don't touch the money" stands very true. And Haroon, and I quote, says, "It would take a catastrophic level event for you not to get it." And here we are, Haroon, 8 months later, still
For
waiting on
the
that bonus check.
for the record, I said that near the end of February, before everything blew up. So, I wasn't saying this in the middle of March. I was saying this like
No,
around February 27th, I believe.
it was right around that.
Yeah.
The very next
Yeah.
week is
We
when
returned back
things
to
started
work,
to fall apart.
and I hear David, we just lost about $13,000 worth of revenue. And then from there, we just kept on sliding down that hill.
26,
Yeah.
32, 100 a
Mhm.
day, it went fast. But I mean, that's kind of for everybody that kind of went through this, if you didn't go through it, if you happen to be listening to this from another industry and maybe you're in tech and it really didn't necessarily impact you from the professional level as much, because let's just call it what it is. Hospitality is the industry that was impacted the most. I
Mhm.
feel. I think that's fair
Oh,
to
yeah,
say,
at least
right?
in New York, yeah.
So this happened overnight, essentially. I mean, it
Mhm.
was like February 29th, because it was leap year. We're doing great. We're looking great. We're pacing really well. By March 3rd, everything was gone.
Yeah,
And it was gone in a way that no matter what you did, you couldn't get it back. And you're trying to claw and scrape and scratch. And you're just watching this just kind of drip, 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 drip. And it's like, you have to really think on the fly, what are you going to do about this? And it's a lot of
yeah.
concern, right? And over the course of those 3 weeks, just from a personal standpoint, it was a lot of questions, not even from what's going to happen to me from a personal standpoint, of just a professional standpoint of what can we do to make this right. And then every day a new thing comes out, right? uh NBA suspends their season, baseball suspends their season, NHL suspends their season, this travel ban, that travel ban, these numbers are going up. And it was such a rapid disintegration of everything that we knew to be true just 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 1 week prior. So I kind of know how that kind of worked with me, especially again being on the revenue generation side. Haroon, from a personal and a professional standpoint, what was kind of your mindset, as much as you can remember, as this is all kind of taking place through that first week and a half of March?
Well, back then we weren't taking it as seriously as what reality was. In March, we were just like, okay, the first week we were like, oh, it's just an anomaly, thinking people are just a little scared. They're kind of backing out. It's gonna be okay. The second week, it got even worse. We were looking at it. We were looking at the revenue not come in, and even on the accounting side where you're trying to maintain your cash flow and there's just not enough cash, you start panicking a little bit too, like, oh, okay, we also need to pay bills. Let's continue to pay our bills as normal, but let's be careful. Third week comes, and that's when, like, pretty much everyone is starting to everything is starting to shut down. you know um we're hearing about hotels temporarily closing, and then we stop paying our bills at that point, and we're like, okay, we're in trouble. We need to figure something out. We need to make sure that we reduce our expenses, like, to the bare bones. And then by the fourth week, it was just we just couldn't maintain. Like, at that point, we stopped paying everything. We stopped. Go
And
ahead.
just interrupt you, just for those again who don't necessarily may understand some of the cash flow side that everyone's talking about. Yeah, we lost all of our expected revenues on the books for March and April, but there
Mhm.
was also the challenge of, as this is happening, right? Hotels by and large want to do the right thing by their guests, right? Uh, both from a independently owned hotel, from a smaller company hotel, up to the big branded properties. And just so everybody maybe who doesn't understand this, you know, most of the Marriott properties are not owned by Marriott. They're franchised either by independent families or other types of other companies. Same thing for Hilton, IHG, and so forth. So when Marriott, IHG, Hilton sends out these directives of free cancellations, right? We have to follow them, but that's not coming out of Marriott's pocket per se, because they do certainly get a percentage of revenue. But it's coming out of the whoever owns that individual property, right? So what was happening when this is happening is not only did we lose the revenue that we expected to get, we actually had to refund a lot of revenue we had collected on.
Yeah.
So it was almost like a double whammy, because not only are we giving back revenue that we're not going to collect revenue we expected to collect, but revenue we had on the books in our account due to advanced purchase rates or other prepaid methods. We now had to give that back. So the cash flow went from robust essentially to nothing, and we owed people money,
Yeah. Yeah. So
which
essentially, even on your statements, you're reporting negative revenues because now you're refunding cancellations that you thought at that point were legitimate, but because of the new policies coming out, they weren't. We had to refund everything. So just uh, imagine you lending your brand new car to somebody and then owing money on it, and then basically never seeing that car again, and yet you still owe money. you
mhm.
know essentially the same aspect. So
So as this is happening, how is this affecting you personally? What's kind of going through your personal mindset?
well, so I just recently got furloughed. We're at the end of October right now, and it's throughout the whole process, we ended up closing the hotel, and um, I was still employed. I was still working, mind you, in a limited.
Well, we'll come back to what's happening currently, but going
Mhm.
back to the beginning of the pandemic, as this is all happening, right? And Haroon, as you said, we closed the hotel about the fourth week of March.
Yeah,
And being that he was in accounting, and certainly there are still accounting things that need to be done, regardless of if the hotel is open or closed, Haroon stayed on. But he was part of the team that had to see most of the other team members, including myself, get either furloughed or laid off
yeah,
because the hotel closed. And I can only imagine from your standpoint that was very difficult. It was certainly very difficult from
yeah.
me to hear it. But again, as this is happening towards the beginning of this, how are you personally,
Yeah,
mentally
I mean,
adjusting?
it's disheartening, because it's not just your colleagues, but in my opinion, it was also my friends. The same people that I went to the bar with every Friday. Just the people that I hung out with, the guys and the gals that we went and did things outside of the hotel, not just at the bar, but the fun that we had. You guys were like a true family. And now we have to give you guys the news that we can no longer employ you, or at the very least, we can no longer have you working and not collecting a paycheck. It hurts, and especially when you have to be the person giving that news. It's just such a personal thing, and then you take that home, and you try to get through the day, and you try to look for the bright side, but sometimes it's just not. And you just have to muddle through and try to hope that tomorrow is going to bring better news.
So yeah, I mean, for those again, one of the reasons that Haroon is on here as my first guest is because again we have a really close relationship, and he talked about being friends, and that's certainly something that you hear in companies all the time. Oh, we're friends, we're family. Usually, it's just corporate speak, right? In this case, it really was true.
Yeah,
Um, this team is very, I won't say unique because I'm sure there's other teams out there that are similar, but they're not team. It's not a team that you would often see. So we're running a hotel in Manhattan, and outside of our director of sales, every manager is 35 and under, or I think 37 and under. I think Anka was maybe the oldest. So we're all in the same age group. We're all between 29 and 37. We're all hungry for success, but we're never ever going above or beyond, or I should say, trying to backstab each other. I should say we
yeah,
were literally there to help each other to the point where, if you remember, Haroon, right before this happened, we had a couple of those sessions where we got together as a young management team and actually tried to train each other. So we
yeah,
would come together one session, and I would work and show Haroon and Anka and Mike and Ashley and whoever else wanted to come as part of the management team, and any line levels as well could come. But trying to show them how to read star reports and just different things about revenue generation.
yeah,
Haroon did the same thing for finance. Anka did the same thing for housekeeping and rooms division. So Mike did the same thing for F&B. So
yeah.
we were all helping each other grow. So it was really a great situation. We were there to support each other, help each other grow. And again, all in the matter
Not
of
just
days.
amongst the managers either, but like you mentioned it, the line I was as well. Like even my accounting assistant Cynthia at that time, we let her learn as much as we could. We threw her to other departments and said, okay, so David wants this done in the revenue department, or Michelle wants this done in sales. So even at her level, like where she's 10, 15 years younger than us, she's learning a whole lot more. She's learning the things that were never taught to us at that age.
Absolutely. And to have all of that just broken apart, it was truly heartbreaking because we really truly felt that we were going to be together for a long time. Maybe not
Oh
the same
yeah,
property,
absolutely.
maybe not within the same positions, but in the same company, right? I think
Yeah.
that we all anticipated growing together and really, in some way, being involved with each other's careers for a very, very long time, and it was exciting.
Mm.
And all that gets ripped away in a matter of time. And for me, I had to step back, and obviously I'm furloughed, right? So I'm home. I'm upset, right? But I'm still not in the trenches per se. You
Mhm.
have to deal with this as as you're at work in the empty building, right?
Oh, yeah.
And people that, at least the reports that I've got, people that still had to work, they had to take on so many more responsibilities, and so much got piled
Oh, yeah.
onto them. So from someone who did still work through a large part, really the entire pandemic to this point, how do you balance that professional responsibility with the personal feelings you had going in every day, and not seeing those people that you care about?
You just have to be optimistic. You just have to go in and be like, you know what? I'm working towards opening this place back up. I'm working towards building it back to what it was at the end of 2019, at the beginning of 2020. Like I was essentially motivated by the thought of bringing you back, bringing Anka back, bringing Mike back. Like I'm like, I miss my guys, I miss my people. I want to be able to come back and have that dynamic, because when you find a good group of people to work with, you'll do anything to make sure that continues and that you're continuously successful. And we were really rocking it. And just the thought of getting back to that, it kept me going. uh, I had to wake up and I had to go in. If it was any other place where people didn't care for each other, then it really wouldn't have mattered. you know I would have probably, for the most part, been just completely unmotivated to do anything, and we probably wouldn't have, things would have ended much sooner than they had.
Mhm. So you made a great, you put it up before that, when this first thing started, we kind of didn't think it was going to be as serious as it is, right? And I
Hmm.
remember, a question was posed to me, hey, what's your forecast? What do you think is going to happen? And at the time I said, this is back in March when I was still working.
Yeah.
March is going to be bad. April's going to be bad. The first 2 weeks of May are going to be bad. And then the second 2 weeks will probably start to ramp back up through Memorial Day. And then by June, we'll be back to normal. And I
Yeah.
really believe that. And that was honestly the mindset of a lot of people in the hotel space, at least in New York, that I spoke with. So it wasn't just myself that thought that. But as this kind of transitions, and you can see now through May, it's not coming back. June, it's not coming back. July, it's not coming back. And it's just continuation of this kind of negativity. Was there any point that you felt that mindset switch, or the optimism kind of start to damper because it's not coming back the way that we expected it to?
Yeah. So, we reopened in July in a very limited capacity, or very low rates, very limited occupancy, following the CDC guidelines to make sure that there's no spread of the coronavirus happening in our hotel. And so near the middle to the end of July, we reopened, and then from there we tried to stay afloat. We performed very well against the market, against our competitive set, where we weren't bringing in the best rate, but we had the number of people occupying the hotel, and because of that, we thought that maybe that would have been enough for us to stay open and at least get into a good position. That lasted about 2.5 months, and then we were forced to reclose again because the performance just wasn't there, and that's when I just felt like, there's really nothing that can be done at this point to bring us back. As a matter of fact, my mind just completely went the total opposite direction, where at this point we're reclosing. I don't expect this hotel to open up ever again. Right. So that was at the end of September. We reclosed, and then October was just cleaning up the books as much as possible. And right now the hotel is temporarily closed, and I am furloughed. However, you know, I don't see the hotel opening back up after such a situation.
So how do you kind of, again, you have, by working through the pandemic, right? You have a lot of pressure on you. You're
Hmm.
certainly still getting a lot of pressure from above property management. Um, to watch your expenses as much as you can, right? But you're talking about keeping that optimism all the way through, and then you talk about as we reclose, that mindset kind of changes, right? So, what have you been able to do to kind of keep your mental capacity as positive as possible? What have you been able to recognize about yourself that has maybe pushed you through the last several weeks as this is all happening?
It's not so much me, but just a support system, like anybody, including yourself, somebody they can reach out to and just talk to about the situation. Or even, when you have a good leader, like our leader, our general manager, Paul, who was, great. And, we worked side by side throughout the whole thing, throughout the whole closure. We were just there supporting each other, making sure that, we were providing the most accurate information and uh, in the most optimistic light, and just basically letting corporate and ownership know, like, look, it is possible for us to move forward. These are the steps we need to take. And like, even though internally you're feeling a certain type of way, you don't want to exude that to your higher executives, because you don't want them to think that you don't have any confidence in the hotel. We do, but we just want to make sure that we follow the steps to get there, and we have the support, just like how Paul and I were supporting each other. Corporate would support us as well.
So,
And
dealing
that's
with,
it.
go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, it wasn't anything personally that I did for myself. It was just just the people around me.
So, dealing with, above property and corporate expectations, right? So, there's still, like I said, there's expectations. Certainly, they're different than they were going into the year.
Hmm.
But I have to imagine, not just for yourself, not just for Paul, not for who was working at our property, but any property that's out there that's still in operation or even out of operation temporarily. There's a lot of pressure from the top about what are we doing? What are we doing? What are we
Yeah.
going to do? Right. So, and maybe more than it's ever been. And you're, I'm assuming, already stretched really thin, right? So, how do you, as a person who is still working, deal with that additional pressure from the top coming down while you're also taking on responsibilities you may not have had to deal with before, and just getting yourself stretched really thin while also dealing at the same time with just the personal ramifications of COVID, right?
Well, I mean, the good thing is that, while the hotel is closed, there's a whole lot less for you to do in your own role, right? So, as an accountant, there's not as many invoices to process. There's not as much revenue to look at. So your day opens up to, do other things like maintain the building. Go through each floor and make sure that there's nothing leaking, or the plumbing is correct, there's nothing overflowing, anything like that. And that's essentially what kept us all busy. Yeah.
During all of this, again, we talk about the kind of the mental shifts you've had throughout. At any point, you said you've been in the hospitality industry for 10 years. Is there any, has there, was it a time, is there a time, are you currently deciding to maybe potentially leave the industry?
Yeah, unfortunately, with the way things are right now, especially in New York, hospitality is not getting the support it needs from the government, and it hurts. It hurts not just the people working there, but it hurts, all the executives that manage these assets. Uh, we essentially don't have jobs. The hotels are permanently closing. That means that those aren't jobs that will not be returning at any point. So I have no other choice but to look outside the industry. There are other industries that are flourishing right now. And not not to blame them, but it's essentially because of the pandemic. Like, for example, the pharmaceutical company, the pharmaceutical industries, they're doing great right now. They're expanding. They're hiring more people. They're making sure that everybody who needs medicine or everybody who needs their prescriptions is going out, and essentially, that's where the jobs are, and that's where essentially I'll be headed.
Hey, everybody. Sorry about that. A little bit of a tech issue. I do apologize. We seem to have lost Haroon as well. Of course, right? first show you have a little bit of a tech issue. Haroon's just jumping back on, so I do apologize for that little bit of confusion there. But looking forward to continuing the conversation. Haroon, thank you for continuing my guest, even though we had a little bit of a hiccup here on the tech side.
That's right. We need to finish this conversation.
I know, so it's really been a great one. I've really enjoyed it. So you talk about how we were talking about transitioning industries, right? Coming from hospitality for the last 10 years or so, and now potentially looking into other forms of work, right?
Mhm.
Because again, accounting skills are very transferable. So what went into kind of that decision to making that move? Was it something that was kind of easy for you to do? Did you have to think about it a lot? What was kind of the mindset and the process of making that decision?
No, it was just the thought of trying to be a part of an industry that's essentially dying right now. Um, when the ship sinks, you can either try to save yourself or sink with it. And unfortunately, that's just not an option. You have to be able to survive somehow, especially during a pandemic like this. You need to be able to, provide for your family and bring home the bacon, so to speak. It's uh, it's something that you have to be able to do. You have to adapt and you have to flow with it. So at this point, it's not something that I planned on doing at any point in my life or in my career. And essentially, hopefully it's something, it's an industry that I do plan on coming back at some point.
So if I'm someone who's been like yourself in the industry for 10 years and I need to potentially make that decision to move forward, what are some of the steps you took? What did you do to market yourself outside of the industry?
Well, you can generalize your expertise, right? So accounting would probably fit the best in terms of generalizations. You can essentially use your experience in any industry, but it may be a little bit more difficult for somebody who's, for example, a front desk agent or a room attendant. But you just have to kind of frame yourself in a way that essentially says that you are somebody who's able to work with others and you're very receptive to your customers' needs, and essentially somebody who works at the front desk may able to get a retail position or may be able to actually even grow their career in a different industry overall.
So what are your thoughts on someone taking a step back, right? Would you now I understand that again your skills are very transferable. Maybe people in the industry don't, and I personally believe that hospitality skills are transferable to almost any industry. I
Hmm.
mean, the adaptability that you have to work in hotels, especially as you move up that ladder, right? You're touching on so many different departments. Haroon, you're in accounting, but you could easily step in, and have a revenue discussion because you've been in that, you've been exposed to that. You could easily step into an operations role because you've been exposed to that. You may not be the best in terms of overall experience, but you have enough baseline
Hmm.
to be competent, right? That's what hotel people bring. And they
Yeah,
bring problem solving skills and they bring communication skills and they bring service recovery skills. And these are all skills and that any business needs. I don't care what business you're in, whether it's tech, finance, pharmaceuticals, retail. If you can't relate to your customer and you can't develop relationships skills
absolutely.
with your
Yeah.
customer, then you're not going to have a business. And hotel people, I won't say more than other industries, but and I should say hospitality people because it all in hospitality.
Yeah, absolutely.
I won't say there's more than other industries, but there's no less. The hospitality industry develops some of the best problem solvers, the best analyzers,
Oh, yeah.
the best relationship developers that you can find in any market. And I've seen from a personal level and from speaking to other people that other companies aren't seeing it the same way. That people in our industry are having challenges transferring outside of the industry, especially again, if you don't have those financial skills, right? Maybe you are someone who grew up who developed up in operations or F&B, and now you're trying to move into say a retail store role or a a customer success manager for say a tech company. what would you say to those people that are having those struggles? Because it can beat up on you. Again, speaking from a personal level,
Yeah.
what would you recommend to those people that are having those issues?
Well, I would ask them if they're in any position to, maybe just as you said, you know, maybe not start from the beginning, but can you afford to take one step back? Can you afford to, instead of um, jumping into a manager role, can you start, 2 or 3 levels below that, and learn your way up? You're capable of getting to the manager level, but are you willing to invest additional 3, 4, 5 years to get back there? You know, if you are, then I would absolutely advise that you do it. You take that time and you learn the new industry, and at that point you can say that you have expertise in multiple industries. You've adapted yourself to not just one but two professions, and that makes you a whole lot more marketable. You can basically sell yourself to a third industry if you decide to, because now you can kind of mesh your experience and say that I know tech, I know in the medical field, and maybe I can get into something somewhere in the middle. You know.
No, absolutely. I think you're 100% right. I mean, this is a time for a lot of reset, right? And we talked about that
Yeah.
actually, and we talked about that back in March when this was really all falling apart. And I remember saying that this is going to be the biggest reset our industry has ever seen, and it's turned into probably the biggest reset the world has ever seen
Oh yeah.
to a large degree. And this is again, it kind of goes back to that mindset we talked about as we opened up, right? You can sit in your house or your apartment or wherever you are, and woe is me. And listen, this is very tough for a lot of people, right? Even people like myself who haven't been working um, full time since March. It's very tough. People like Haroon who have been working since March. It's also very tough. So everyone's going through a lot of stuff right now,
Yeah.
and it's you have to just try as best you can to find the way to make this productive, right? And it's going to be different for everybody. There's going to be different ways that success is seen for everybody. For someone, it may be learning a new skill, maybe learning a new
Mhm.
language. It may be spending more time with your family. For other people, it may literally just be not going insane, right? And not turning to negative habits. And it's just coming through healthy. That's also a success story. Please don't, if anybody's out there that's maybe you haven't learned something new or haven't developed a new skill, and all you're doing is just making yourself mentally healthy enough to make it through, that is a success story, because this is extremely mentally challenging times for myself, for Haroon, for anybody in all of our situations. So, Haroon, we're about to wrap it up here, but for anybody, let's say you're talking to someone who has been having those issues, right? What is maybe the one thing that you would tell them from your experience that going through this and the mental shifts you've had that maybe you can relate to someone to help them maybe get out of a little bit of a funk that they may be going through?
Well, just just try to be as optimistic as you possibly can. I completely understand that going through this for 6, 7, 8 months, at this point you are, you're drained. You may not be able to find the energy, but let's keep in mind that we are going into 2021 very soon, and everyone looks at the new year as a reset, a person, and they set personal challenges for themselves. They set resolutions, and maybe we can take the opportunity to do just that. Let 2021 roll over, and we set new resolutions for ourselves. We mentally re-energize by saying that these are the new goals that I have for the new year. Let's try to hit them. Let's try to uh, let me try to be a better dad or a better mom, or let me pick up a few new hobbies, or let me double my efforts in searching for a new job, and let me not take any rejections any more personal that I do now, because essentially you're not the only one looking for for one job, it's 1,000 other people trying to fill that position. So
Yeah.
just just be positive.
Yeah, and that's a great point you mentioned. Listen, you're seeing jobs you may be qualified for, and you may be applying to those jobs, and you may be getting very quick rejection letters, like me.
Yeah.
And it doesn't necessarily mean it's something bad on you. It's the fact that there are thousands, hundreds, and potentially thousands of people with very similar and probably even more experience and more skill set than you have. And it's just, we flipped again in the matter of several months. We went from having over 1 million hospitality jobs being open and not being able to be filled to having such an influx of talent out there. We're talking about talent all the way up to the C-level executives, right, that have been furloughed or laid off or transitioning out of their position. So it's tough out there. Try to, as Haroon said, keep positive. Work on your support system, as Haroon said, whether it's friends, whether it's family, whether it's professional therapy, whatever it may be, whatever works for you. Don't be scared to do it. It's so important because this has been such a draining experience on so many people for so many different reasons. And again, part of the reason that I'm developing this show is to help you understand, if you do feel alone, that you're not. You are very well in company in what you're going through. And I hope that we can kind of translate that to you if you are having trouble. So Haroon, I really, really appreciate you for being my guest today.
It's an honor to be your first guest.
It was, I think, you told a really great tale and a really great story. So any final words for you?
Let's just get through this together.
Yeah, that's that's short, sweet, but on to the point. So Haroon, again, thank you so much for being my guest. We will certainly, I'm sure, have you back on to get an update on how things are going as we move through here. And of course, you and I will be in constant contact over the next for the
Absolutely.
rest of our lives, hopefully.
Thank you, David.
Thanks, Haroon. Wow. So yeah, that's a really, I think, a great way to start off this show. To start off this series is talking to a guy like Haroon, because he has seen the gamut, right? He has been on both sides of the coin of seeing all of your colleagues, all of your friends being laid off, being furloughed, being set apart, being overworked, being challenged with new responsibilities, being pressured from the top, and being just having to be involved with the day-to-day operation of a hotel that is essentially now, for lack of a better term, become a graveyard of your past experiences. And then obviously, unfortunately, transitioning to being furloughed himself. So just a great way to start this series. And I really hope you enjoy it. Again, if you are someone that wants to come on and tell your story, this is a very open forum. There's no parameters to who you have to be. If you are a front desk agent, if you are a housekeeper, if you work on the cruise industries, if you're a general, it doesn't matter. If you are in the hospitality field, even if you're not, if you say you work in tech and you want to come and talk about some stuff, that's fine. Come on. Let's have a chat. Reach out to me on LinkedIn. I would love to have you on and just get some real stories from the industry so that we can, again, hopefully let people out there that may feel alone know they're not. And you know what? If we get a lot of these stories together and really get that impactful, emotional, raw discussion that I'm hoping to get, maybe we can actually send these out, maybe push some government officials to make some decisions, because yes, as Haroon alluded to, there has not been a lot of government assistance for hotels, and it's been in restaurants as well. I do not want to leave restaurants out, and it's been heartbreaking to see an industry that so many people love, because if you're here in this industry, you really have a passion for it, and we gotta find a way to do better for everybody out there. So again, my name is David Mignano. Very happy for having you all as my guest on this first episode of Be My Guest, and I look forward to putting another one out there. And thanks for dealing with the tech issues that we had, and maybe we'll talk to you next time. Thanks a lot.